Yo, everybody. My name is Jamel.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Ashley.
And we are so glad that you're here. Jessica and Ashley are two of my good homies. And hopefully you're joined with your group and your group leader right now as you watch this video, because we're going to be listening and talking a lot with each other today. Now, if that just made you a little bit nervous, that's all right. The whole reason we have groups is to give you a place to discuss both the difficult and the happy parts of life in real, honest ways. Your group is a safe space to talk openly. So, my prayer today as we navigate a conversation about a serious and sensitive subject is that you will be mature enough to listen and brave enough to share in whatever way you feel comfortable. Today, in our groups, we're going to talk about suicide. So, let's start right now. Take a few minutes and talk through these questions with your group.
I think it's normal to have a lot of different thoughts and feelings at once when you hear about suicide. But just because we may feel all kinds of things about suicide doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. In fact, talking about suicide is really important because statistics show that in an average-sized room, at least one person, if not more, have been impacted by suicide in some way. Suicide is actually the second leading cause of death for people in middle school. I think that makes suicide something worth talking about.
Totally. I also think it's important that we're all on the same page and really understand what this topic means. So I have some cards here with some words and definitions relating to suicide. And your group should have an envelope filled with words and definitions that we have here. And as a group, you're going to try to match up the words with their correct definitions.
And we'll give you a few minutes to do this, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so how do you think you did? And we're gonna see how we did. Wanna start?
Suicide, when someone ends their own life on purpose.
Suicide attempt, when someone tries to end their life on purpose but doesn't succeed.
Suicidal thoughts, when someone thinks about or considers ending their life.
Suicidal threat, when someone talks about or writes that they will attempt to end their life.
Intrusive thoughts, unwanted or unpleasant thoughts, images, and urges that can pop into our heads without warning and for no reason.
Hopelessness, when someone believes that life can't get better.
Worthlessness, when someone feels unimportant or that they have nothing valuable to offer the world.
Brokenhearted, a feeling of deep and complete sadness.
And hope, confidence that something good can come out of anything. Now, let me just say, if you're someone who's struggling with suicidal thoughts or has experienced any of the words we just talked about, it's nothing that you should feel ashamed of or afraid to talk about with someone you trust. This is a safe place. The adults at your church care about you and want to help you with whatever it is you're dealing with. So please let today be the day you open up to an adult who you trust for help.
Yeah, and I understand that this is really difficult stuff to talk about, and we probably all of us have a lot of questions when it comes to suicide. But something that we really value is being able to ask hard questions together. So let's take a few minutes to do that with our groups.
Unfortunately, there are no simple answers for any of our questions. Often with suicide, we end up with more questions than answers, and that's part of what makes it so complicated to understand. While there usually isn't one main reason that someone has suicidal thoughts or behaviors, so much of it comes down to feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness. In other words, they feel like life isn't worth living if it's gonna be lived feeling like this.
I know that I don't have all the answers. I wish I did, but I don't. What I do know is that God made us, loves us, and cares about every detail of our lives, including all of our mental health. And because of that, God doesn't leave us without wisdom and tools to be able to navigate these really difficult subjects. Talk about this question for a minute with your group.
God really does care about what we're feeling. Thousands of years ago, there was a guy named David who walked through some really hard stuff in his life. I think we can learn a lot from him when it comes to conversations like the one we're having today. As a young boy, David wasn't really known for much of anything, but God had plans to make David king, which was a pretty big deal. Unfortunately, the actual king at the time, Saul, wasn't too happy when he heard God's plan. David was gonna take Saul's place on the throne, and everyone was pumped about it. The people loved David, and that made Saul really jealous. So Saul made a bold decision. He ordered David to be killed.
And when David found out about Saul's plan to have him murdered, David left everything and everyone that he knew to run away to safety, as that's what you do when someone's trying to murder you. He went to other kingdoms for help, but at every single turn, he was left to deal with it on his own. Eventually, David ended up hiding alone and afraid in a cave. Now, just imagine this with me for a few seconds. How do you guys think that David must have felt? Well, let's just among us, like what do you guys think David must have been feeling?
I'd say lonely. Yeah. Alone in a cave, running away from someone trying to kill me. I'd be alone.
Yeah.
Terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like every sound makes me jump.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that at all.
He went from being a beloved future king to a man running for his life, literally. He was alone, he'd been betrayed, he had no one to help him. I think if I had been David, I'd be feeling really lonely, depressed, and hopeless.
Well, in his loneliness and hopelessness, here's what David actually wrote. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Maybe you've heard that word brokenhearted before. It's that feeling of deep and complete heartache. It's when you feel so weighed down by pain or sadness, your heart actually feels like it's aching.
I felt that before.
Yeah. Well, here's what David knew to be true, that no matter how bad his circumstances were, no matter how hopeless he felt, no matter how alone or misunderstood or even afraid he was, God was still with him. But not just with him, but close to him in his heartbreak. In fact, let me just remind y'all again what David himself wrote in all of this craziness. He wrote, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted."
You know, this is so important for us too.
Yeah.
When we feel hopeless, God wants to be close to us. When we feel afraid, God wants to be close to us. When we feel depressed, God wants to be close to us. When we feel worthless, God wants to be close to us. When we feel so much pain or sorrow or sadness that our hearts feel like they're actually aching, God wants to be close to us. In our deepest heartache, God is with us. And that gives me hope. Maybe it does for you too.
I mean, I think it does. But let's talk about it some more in your groups together.
If we're being honest, even though we know God is with us, it doesn't always make us feel better.
True.
Finding comfort in God's presence can be really challenging when we feel hopeless and heartbroken. Simply knowing and believing God is near doesn't mean our circumstances get better or that those intrusive thoughts just stop or that our feelings suddenly change. And while God's presence with us is the most powerful tool we have to fight against feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness, I think it's important we be honest and say that it doesn't always change things in the way we want.
That's why I think the next part of what David said is so very important. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. Turn to your groups and talk about this question before we move on.
When you're completely brokenhearted and hopeless, God is with us. In fact, God never left us. And beyond that, God wants to rescue and help us. I know that complicated subjects like suicide won't be resolved with just one Bible verse. These are deep and difficult things to navigate. It would be wrong of me to say that simply reading David's story or memorizing this psalm would fix it all, because it probably will take a lot more than that. I wish I could guarantee that God's rescue meant we'd never experience the pain or depression or intrusive thoughts causing our heartbreak. But what I can promise is that the pain we feel, the trauma we've experienced, the circumstances we're walking through, they're not the end. God's rescue means that there will always be help, because God gives help and God gives hope. See, not only is God there to give us hope, but God also puts others in our lives to support, love, and help us during our darkest times. Even if you wonder where God is during this pain, There are people in your life who want to remind you of the hope you have. They want to show you how to take steps to get help. God gives us so many tools to help us when we're struggling. Things like prayer, counseling, friends, family, exercise, and maybe even medication.
All great things, all great things.
Sometimes we just need a few of those tools to help us, and other times we need them all. Either way, it's okay to take that first step toward the help you need, because getting the help you need often leads to the hope you can find in God.
As we begin to kind of wrap up this conversation, I want to make sure that every single person watching this has a next step. So I want to take the time to talk specifically to a few groups of people. First, if you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, I want you to take a step towards help. Believe me when I tell you, this is one of the safest places that you can do that today. Here are just a few ways to start. First, identify your thoughts. Start by recognizing what unpleasant, intrusive, or suicidal thoughts that you're having. If you catch yourself repeatedly thinking about harming yourself or ending your life, you need to recognize that's not a healthy, helpful thought to keep thinking. While it's certainly nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed of, I do want you to know that acting on those thoughts isn't the answer. Then, tell someone you trust. I know that opening up to someone about the hopelessness or worthlessness you may be experiencing can feel risky, and maybe it is. I also know that you're strong enough and brave enough to take that risk. See, in the same way that a person would see a doctor when they're physically sick or injured, people who are struggling with their mental health need the help of a professional to get through it too. And the first step to getting that help is telling a parent, a trusted friend, a small group leader, a church leader, a coach, a teacher, or a school counselor. Any adult who cares about you and wants what's best for you can find you the help and hope that you need. Before we move on, take some time with your group to talk through these questions.
Not everyone has experienced suicidal thoughts themselves, but they might have a friend or a loved one who's struggling with them. If that's you and you want to be a good friend to them, here's what you can do. First, take their words seriously. If someone shares that they're thinking of ending their own life, believe them. Sometimes the only way people know how to share these thoughts is by joking about them, so take whatever they share with you seriously. Next, talk to an adult you trust. If someone you know is suicidal, you have to talk to a trusted adult. Trusted adults are a way God provides help. Even if your friend asks you not to tell, it's important that you do speak up. And I understand that's a really hard position to be in as a friend, but it's the best way you can get them the help that they need. Remember, you aren't a counselor, so you shouldn't try to fix their problem on your own. You need to seek a trusted adult who can guide them to take the best steps to get help.
Absolutely. And I want you to take a few minutes now to talk about these couple more questions with your group.
Some of us have lost loved ones to suicide. If that's you, I am so sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for the pain that you're feeling and the pain your loved one was feeling. I know that their story didn't end the way you hoped it would, and there are no words to make it better. I hope that these few things can offer you some comfort in the heartbreak you're feeling. First, know that it's not your fault. It's very normal to have feelings of guilt when someone close to you takes their life. No matter what you may be thinking or feeling, know the truth. It is not your fault. There's not a thing you could have done or said to change the outcome. Next, it's okay to have a lot of feelings. When you experience loss from suicide, there are so many emotions and feelings that go along with that tragedy. There's no right or wrong way to feel. No matter what emotions you experience, know that they're normal and okay to feel. Finally, talk with someone you trust. Sometimes it can be really healing to talk with someone about the person you lost, because even though your loved one may have died by suicide, they are so much more than that one decision. Talking about who they were and what you loved about them can help keep them in your thoughts in a positive way.
Thank you so much for that, Ashley. And we'll throw it back to y'all again to take a few minutes to talk through these questions with your group.
No matter how this conversation makes you feel today, I want you to always remember this. God gives help and God gives hope. God is close to you and gives you hope when you feel brokenhearted. And God provides us people and tools to get the help we need.
You're surrounded by people who love you and value your life. I know for a fact you have those people in your group. Your parents, the people you live with, your teachers, your coaches, your friends, and your group leader are those people too. They want to help and support you no matter what. They want you to have hope. So will you continue to open up to them today? Maybe start right now by sharing with your group leader so they can support you as you take the steps you need toward help and hope in any situation.
All three of us want to thank you for sticking with us through such a difficult conversation today. Like I said, we want your youth ministry to be a safe place to process what you're feeling because we care about you and we want what's best for you. I hope you felt that today. Now, as we close, we hope you would just take a few minutes to pray together in your groups.